Hello, my name is Elizabeth Elle. I'm a professor at Simon Fraser University on the traditional and unceded lands of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam peoples. And I'm making this recording for the Lasqueti Island Bumblebee Project to give you some ideas about how to identify the bumblebees that you might see and also the best ways to photograph them. I'm going to share my slides. Okay. So, photographing and identifying bumblebees. This is not all the bumblebees in British Columbia, but it is the ones you're most likely to see. The first question is, why is this project about bumblebees? Well, they're adapted to cooler environments. They tend to have their center of diversity further north than other bees, like in the middle of this continent. And with climate change, ranges are shifting northward, and some of them are even contracting. And so it's of interest to be studying their distributions at this time. They're social, they have a queen and workers. Later in the year, they'll make males. And so because of this social structure, their genetics differ from other bees like minor bees. Some species will nest in chickadee nest boxes, which makes them very visible to people who garden. But in those situations, there's an introduced wax moth pest, which has transferred from honeybees to bumblebees, and it can be a concern for bees in those boxes. And they're also just really charismatic. They're large, fuzzy, and cute, and so they can often be identified to species even by non-experts. I'm going to go through some explanations. I'm sorry this is a bit wordy. There's basically 8 species that you're likely to encounter, a few more that might be present but uncommon in my data here at the South Coast, and your observations will help us know if they're common on Lasqueti or if you've got a different fauna entirely. What we usually do in identifying bees is we look at their color patterns, at least for bumblebees. Even though those color patterns vary geographically, I'll tell you what the color patterns are that you're likely to see here. Female abdomens have 6 segments, and the order of colors on these segments is important. And so that will make it important when you're photographing them to try to capture the abdomen. Also used is the pattern of fur on the back of the thorax, which is that middle segment after the head and between the head and the abdomen, and the length of the cheek. So do they have a long face or a short face? I'm just going to jump into telling you how to identify some of our most common bees. I'm starting with the yellow and black ones. So there's the yellow-faced bumblebee and the yellow bumblebee. I know those names are not very different, are they? But the real difference is whether or not they have yellow on their face. Otherwise, they look very similar. You can see in the photos on the left that there's yellow on the face of this bee, even noticeable from the side. But the one on the right, the face is black, even noticeable again from the side. There's a little bit more information here, but that's also available on a handout for you. I'll say that the yellow bumblebee, Bombus fervidus, that we used to call Bombus californicus, tends to be in our region further south, like Victoria or South Vancouver, and not found further north in my experience. Whereas Bombus vosnesenskii, the yellow-faced bumblebee, is extremely common, especially late in the year, and it's kind of everywhere now. Other black and yellow bees include our endangered western bumblebee, Bombus occidentalis. It looks a lot like the yellow-faced bee, Bombus fervidus, but the back of its abdomen is white in our region. There are other color forms elsewhere, but our western bumblebee will have a white abdomen tip. The line drawing shows some yellow on it. That is not what I ever see. Just look for the white on the abdomen tip. We also have a yellow and black bee where the entire thorax and the beginning of the abdomen are yellow. This is the introduced eastern bumblebee. I'd be very interested to know if you have any on the Lasqueti because this is an escape from greenhouse pollination. Next up comes some of the red bees. The technical common name for Bombus melanopygus is the black-tailed bumblebee because the absolute end tip of the abdomen is black. I'll concede that. But the other common name is the one I like better. It's the red-tailed bumblebee, and that's because, boy, is it red. It's our earliest spring bee. They're out sometimes even in February, and they will just read to your eyes as a very red abdomen. And this is different from the two-form bumblebee, Bombus bifarius, or recently renamed as Vancouverensis. I like the bifarius name a little bit because it looks like it has two white spots on the back of the thorax. And you can really see that in this picture on Camus here on the bottom. Those two light color spots, bi for two, are really distinctive in this species. And the other thing that you'll notice is that the orangey red is followed by yellow on the abdomen. But on Bombus melanopygus, there really isn't much yellow after the red. Um, and there's two more reasonably common reddish bumblebees that you might encounter. The yellow-head bumblebee, Bombus flavifrons, actually comes in two different color forms. The yellow comes before the orange on the abdomen. So I'm going to just go back, look carefully at the yellowhead bumblebee cartoon in the upper left. It's yellow followed by orange. And for Bombus bifarius, it is orange followed by yellow. Okay, so again, yellow first and then the orange. These bees, to my eyes, tend to look skinny and very stripy. So those abdomens are almost, they look like they're outlined in black. So they look stripier than some of the other bees, and you can see that in some of the photos that I'm sharing. They do, as I said, come in a dark form where instead of orange, it's all black, but it's yellow before that, black on the abdomen. And that dark form is less common. I think if you get a good clear photo, we'll be able to tell. And then there's Bombus mixtus, which is also known as the fuzzy-horned bumblebee. And that's because its head tends to be fuzzier. The horns are, well, it's the antennae, right? They don't have horns. The way I tell these from Bombus flavifrons, first of all, they tend to be black before the orange, not yellow before the orange, right? And you can really see that in the lower right. It's black before orange. To my eyes, the orange doesn't look very bright. It looks almost brownish, and these bees look messy. Their fur isn't nice and combed and neat like we see on some of the other bees. It just looks kind of fuzzy, messy, and fatter than the Bombus flavifrons. If you had two of these side by side, you would notice that the flavifrons is skinnier than the mixtus. Flavifrons also has a long face, but that can be a little bit difficult to see. And if you see something that doesn't seem to fit any of those categories, it could be a male. Males tend to be yellower than females, and they have a longer, skinnier abdomen. They're not fat from egg production. And they have an extra abdominal segment, and that's why their back ends look longer. They also don't have the pollen carrying structure on their leg, called the scopa. And so it's circled in this diagram where females have flattened, shiny, kind of concave areas on their legs where they pack their balls of pollen, and male legs are just kind of skinny and rounded. I think it's easiest to tell when you can see their face. Male bees have longer antennae. They have a longer, an extra antennal segment, and a yellower face. And they just kind of look messy. They often don't groom the pollen off, like the one on the blanket flower here in the lower right. They just look messy, dirty little boys. There are also cuckoo bumblebees. Named, that common name is after cuckoo birds that lay their eggs in the nest of other bees. Cuckoo bumblebees lay their eggs in the nest of other bees and then don't do any work of provisioning the nest. The queen cuckoo bumblebee just keeps laying eggs, and the workers from the regular bumblebee wind up provisioning the nest and taking care of those offspring. It can be hard to tell them apart, but what you might look for if you're noticing them and wondering if it's different, their abdomen, look at the picture in my hand. Their abdomen is shiny. They have less fur on their abdomen than a bumblebee does. And the color pattern again will be confusing relative to those more straightforward bumblebees that you might be seeing. So just to summarize, the field marks of a bee, you need a good shot usually of the abdomen, like the picture in the upper right. The pattern of fur on the abdomen is important for identification, and that's because it's the relative placement of the yellow versus the red versus the black fur. The fur pattern on the thorax can be useful, as is the length of the cheek. Quite a few of our bumblebees have what's called a clouded mix of yellow and black fur on the back of the thorax, but usually I'm looking at the abdomen when I'm doing my identifications. And for black bees, it's better to have a picture of the head so you see the face. So both of these photos on the bottom of the slide are bad. Like the one on the left is out of focus. The one on the right, I can't really see the abdomen, but I can tell that the one on the left has a yellow face and the one on the right has a black face. And so I know the one on the left is Bostonsenskii and the one on the right is either Californicus or Occidentalis. And I happen to know because of when the pictures were taken that it's Occidentalis. But I wouldn't be able to tell that from the photo. So when you're photographing these bees, I've already told you, you want to try to get the side view. But the other thing to keep in mind is that insects are mostly going to be active when the weather is good. They don't mind slight drizzle, but they're more active when it's warm and sunny. So plan on going out on warmer, sunny days or parts of days to go bee hunting. Don't shade your bee. So you should stand looking into the sun because if you move in front of a bee and your shadow goes over the bee when it's on a flower, it's likely to fly away. It's going to be startled. So try not to let your shadow go over your bee. Unless it's cooler, drizzly, try to keep your distance. So if it's colder, they'll move more slowly. But basically, they'll respond to your movement, especially early in spring. They tend to be a bit more skittish, except especially the queens that are searching for nest sites, and they can scare away. Later, I find that they're just so busy foraging, and their faces are in the flowers, and you can get a bit closer to them. Often, photos of them taking off from a flower are better than those with their face in the flower. These two photos on the bottom are the same bee when it's going into a penstemon flower and when it's backing out of it. And obviously, on its way in, I can't see it. So I just keep taking photos, hoping I will catch when the bee backs out and hovers for a second, and then I can see her abdomen. I can see this is a Bombus flaviforans dark form. Other things, some people like to take video. I find that it's very difficult to identify from a video. So please take a photo. If you're a photographer and you're experienced with a proper camera, wonderful, but using your phone can be fine. It depends on the camera you have on your phone. Get to know it. Will it focus if you're close to a subject? Try now with the small things that you think are about bumblebee size and see how hard it is to get your phone to focus on something that's a bee shape. Does your phone have shortcuts? So I've set my phone so that I can use the volume to take a photo. I don't have to touch the button that's on the phone's screen. So look into that for your phone. You can just Google that. And find and use your burst feature. So because the insects are moving and sometimes quite quickly, one of the best things you can do is take lots of photos. One of the burst photos is likely to be clear enough to use, or if not, you have multiple photos of the same specimen, and the combination of them is likely to be good enough. So the bottom photos here are 3 photos from a burst sequence I took of a bee on my Enkianthus. It's clearly the red-tailed bee. Look at her red bum. You can see her tongue is out in some of those photos, right? So find the burst feature, really helpful for moving in insects. Other things, don't overuse your optical zoom. It's easy to get into the habit of just pinching your screen, spreading your fingers to make a zoom. But a photo that is highly pixelated from the zoom may not have enough detail to be magnified to see the relevant characters on the bee. So if your camera has multiple lenses, you'll see something like what I've circled on this picture of my phone screen, and choose from the magnification options available by touching them. So clicking on the 2x in this case, rather than pinching the screen, you'll get a photo that is better for an expert to continue to zoom on it some more. Um, Here's a mix of photos. I took them all. They're all bad. And identification is going to be difficult because either I can't see the end of the abdomen in the photo. I'm just going to go clockwise, starting with the one on the salmonberry. Can't see enough of the abdomen to be 100% sure. The next one over, I can't see the abdomen again. It's in shade. The third one. Again, I don't have a good view of it, even though it's sort of from the side. I could tell it's a female because she has pollen. Only females will have pollen, but yeah, not quite sure. The one on the right doesn't have enough sun on her for me to tell. The one as I go around clockwise, I'm on a penstemon. I could see some of the abdomen, but not all. I could make a guess on that one. Not sure I feel completely comfortable. The one on the lavender in the middle bottom. I can't see the abdomen at all, even though I can see the face. And then another kind of one in shadow on the Dorsia. These photos are better. Not all of them are in perfect focus, like the one on the finger, which is clearly bifarious. You can see the two spots on the back of the thorax, but they're mostly from the side. And I can see the relative positioning of the different colors of bands. Okay. And that is it for my slideshow. Let me stop my share and come back to talk to you just for another minute. I've given the Lasqueti Island folks some handouts that I hope will be helpful. The most important thing is to just try, take lots of photos in the beginning until you get comfortable with it. I've never had photography training. I'm better at taking pictures all the time. And the most important thing is have fun. Bye.